Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. Oilseed rape looks like it is back in the picture, with the area planted last autumn up by almost 30%. So what about this autumn? With new varieties, clear approaches, and the need to find profitable opportunities on farm, is oilseed rape back in the picture? To help answer these key questions, we're joined by Agrii's oilseed rape experts, Davey and Will Sanderson. Good morning, and it's great to have you here to ask you for your thoughts. As you know, very importantly, farmers are looking for those profitable niches, those profitable opportunities where they can. So, maybe I can start by asking you that big question of, well, where are we at with oilseed rape at the moment in the UK?
So, Tony, I think we're in a much better place than we've been for a couple of years. Crops are looking well, heading towards harvest. We've come off a successful autumn establishment program with oilseed rape last year. 2025 represented a 42-year low of OSR hectarage, and then we saw a bigger planting last year, and we saw a much lower failure rate of crops. We got moisture at the right time with some mild conditions in the autumn, so crops grew away well and have come through the winter pretty well. We have much more confidence around the crop at the moment, so it looks like we might see an increase in the area for 2027 harvest as well.
And Will, what are you hearing from farmers and agronomists on the ground, so to speak?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting developments that I've seen is not necessarily even what we're seeing in fields, is what we're hearing from growers on farm. When I speak to growers today, the conversation's completely changed. You know, a few years ago, many were actively looking for reasons not to grow OSR, whereas today more are asking what they need to do to grow it successfully. Survey data has suggested there will be an increase again this year for autumn 2027 plantings, which reflects that growing confidence. Whether we actually see that full increase remains to be seen, but farmers are practical people and they'll make decisions based on harvest results, market conditions, and how crops are looking like they're going to establish. But I would say the direction of travel is clear.
Yeah. Ian, you said that you, or as an industry, we have greater confidence in the crop. What's changed?
I think this year, if you're out and about, you can see that fields are full from boundary to boundary. We got much better establishment in the autumn. We've seen a decline in the pest pressure, which definitely helped. People have started to really pay attention to the details of growing the oilseed rape crop, and strategies like our 8-point plan. People have been listening to that. They've been choosing better varieties that grow well against the pressures of pests and the environment. And also, one of the biggest things that's increasing confidence at the moment is the grain value of oilseed rape, which has gone up significantly. And we're looking at ex-farm prices in the sort of 400, 450 region, which is much stronger than it has been.
And Will, is that one of the compelling reasons why farmers are speaking to you and saying, yeah, give me the reasons to grow it, but I need that profitability?
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious one. When OSR performs, it is still an incredibly profitable crop. Even with all the challenges that we have with it, it remains one of the few break crops which is capable of generating a really competitive return per hectare. And it's also worth saying it's not just about the crop itself. A good OSR crop does, improves the economics of the entire rotation. We know the following first wheat crop often benefits from better rooting, from reduced disease pressure, from earlier drilling opportunities, and also that higher yield potential. So I'd say that sometimes we focus so much on the OSR gross margin that we can forget to add in the value it creates elsewhere in the rotation as well.
Ian, do you think agronomists would like to see more oilseed rape back in the rotation?
I think it's a great question, Tony, and it is fair to say that oilseed rape has caused some agronomists some headaches over the last few years. But as Will says, there are multiple benefits for customers having oilseed rape in the rotation and having a broad rotation. Without sensible break crops in the rotation, margins get squeezed, and oilseed rape has been one of the most profitable, consistent break crops over 25, 30 years. And it's only in the last few years where the consistency of that crop has been under question and growers' confidence has been knocked. But if we're starting to see more confidence in the marketplace around OSR and more successful crops, that is surely a good thing for our farmer customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, there's the reasons, if you like, to be interested. I can hear that. What are the challenges? I know, and you talked about, the headache it's given some agronomists in supporting their farm clients, and I'm sure for farmers, when they look out in previous years, they see those patchy crops. How do we ensure we have some success with this crop? Well, it's a big question, isn't it? Where do we start?
Certainly is, because OSR is very good at humbling even the best growers. And so the reality is that while interest is returning, OSR is still one of the most technically demanding combinable crops we can grow in the UK. And it's not just the case of it being one big problem, it's a stack of smaller challenges that we need to manage at the same time. I would say the kind of make or break factor would be that establishment stage. So everything else after that is just compounding or correcting what happens in those first 4 to 6 weeks, say. So getting the crop away quickly and evenly is absolutely critical. So what I'm talking about is moisture at drilling or lack of, seed to soil contact, seed bed quality, drilling timing versus risk of pest pressure. I think historically people drilled by calendar date, whereas one of the key messages from Agrii is to drill for moisture and go from there, because OSR doesn't really do catch up growth very well. It does start well or struggle very well.
How do you get that right? How can you improve your chances of a good establishment?
I think it comes down to planning and also patience, Tony. I would recommend that customers get seed on farm early. We're looking like it could be an early harvest. Obviously, there's a little bit of a way to go, but we have seen that oilseed rape can be successfully established from early August through to the beginning second week of September, which is quite a good while. But the conditions at planting need to be right. If we've gone into harvest with a dust bowl scenario and there's no rain in the forecast, I wouldn't recommend drilling. If we see some moisture coming into the forecast, which is often typical for August when we want to be harvesting wheat, that might be the time to think about planning your next year's oilseed rape crop. But we need good seedbed moisture, and as we've already said, don't just look at date, look at conditions, and plan accordingly.
Another big area of concern for farmers and agronomists alike, I'm sure, is that of cabbage stem flea beetle. So, Will, what top tips would you have? What have we learned in terms of our approach to managing this difficult pest?
Well, one of the things that we do at Agrii is offer establishment assurance schemes. So on a number of our varieties in the portfolio, you can get up to a full refund on the cost of seed if it fails by the end of October. Some of the best varieties that we offer are on that list where you do get that full refund, the likes of Maverick and Vegas, which have served us really well and are very, very good varieties. But it's also just about planning. Pressure is still highly variable by season and also region. So it's just about sort of making sure that you do everything you can ahead of time. The pressures will still be there if conditions align. And it is that uncertainty which can make it so difficult to manage at scale.
Thanks, Will. And could you just clarify, how does that establishment assurance scheme work that you're offering?
Yeah, so the scheme, as I mentioned, is a full refund on some of the varieties if they fail by slug damage, by cabbage stem flea beetle damage, or other methods by the end of October. So it's a huge kind of it's a nice bit of assurance and certainty for growers if they are looking to get back into it, to kind of give them that certainty that they can give it a go, and you've got that backing you up if you need it. Of course, it still remains that you should try and do the best you can to get it going. Things like adding takeoff, putting it into the right conditions at the right time, all those will give you a better chance, and it's all about stacking those 1% gains all the time. But if something does go badly wrong, if the pressure is particularly bad this coming autumn, you've got that there if you need it.
To help your decisions for this autumn, download the Growers Autumn Guide 2026. Visit agrii.co.uk/our-services/tools-resources. And Ian, you were talking again before we came on air, so to speak, about the place for farm-saved seed or home-saved seed. What are your thoughts there? What would you like to share?
So yeah, for those people who are still in oilseed rape this year and have conventional varieties on farm, we can offer a home-saved seed service where we can collect the seed off farm post-harvest, treat it and return it back to farmers to plant. You know, it's a lower cost establishment method using conventional seeds. We have seen the benefits of hybrid seed over a number of years, the vigor and the growth habits of those varieties, plus the traits that come through. But there are some competitive conventional varieties available still in the market, Tony.
And of course, everybody likes to hear about new varieties, don't they? We go along, farm tours, events. What's new?
So we obviously have our own trial sites at Agrii for oilseed rape. We look at new and established material, candidate material, and early lines material through those trials, as well as using the usual source references for the industry. And at the moment there have been challenges around oilseed rape. It is not just about gross output. We need to look at the growth habits and traits of these varieties. The disease profile to try and back the right horses, Tony. This year, we have two new oilseed rape introductions with KWS Domingos and also DKX Edge. They are two newer varieties. We also have some very well established varieties in the portfolio that have consistently done well around the challenges that OSR has. And they have good disease profile, good gross output. We look at their biomass in the autumn, and also more importantly, perhaps their speed of development in the spring and how they grow away from pest pressures.
And are these two new varieties that Ian's just talking about there, are they varieties that could be of interest to farmers? Are they really going to open the door to even more interest in this crop?
For sure. I think for me, variety choice is about risk management instead of it just being about yield. One of my bugbears has been that we can often still talk about varieties like it's just a yield ranking exercise, but certainly in OSR that's only part of the story. So for Domingos, the good thing is you've got the highest UK gross output at around 107%, which is a huge benefit, and the oil is good too. But really, for both of those varieties, it comes down to the agronomy in terms of autumn vigor, spring vigor, disease resilience, late season stem health, which is one of the biggest things that we've been monitoring for a number of years. So across the whole board for both of those varieties, you've got a really, really good solid starting point and a first layer of protection against any risk. Essentially, they've both got that.
And Will, it's not just about establishment, is it, in terms of what are the varietal characteristics that can help the farmer when it comes to that stem health later on in the crop's life?
Yeah, so particularly some NPZ varieties which came out a number of years ago, the likes of Maverick and Vegas, the breeder NPZ put a huge amount of time and effort and resource into prioritizing late season stem health rather than stacking traits like some other breeders have done historically. On paper, it looked very interesting, and then I went to the South Wales at iFarm about 3 years ago and saw it in action. Later on in the season, it was a dry year, so most of the other varieties had started to or were fully dying off, but the NPZ varieties, Vegas at the time, was still completely green, and that was translated in the fact that at the bottom of the canopy there was regrowth from where pods had shattered, regrowth of those seeds germinating, whereas underneath those NPZ varieties where they still had that stay green effect, they were still fine and there was nothing growing underneath. So that really was the proof in the pudding for me that late season stem health is really one of the most critical things that you need to look for in a variety.
Can I just go back to that 8-point plan that you mentioned for flea beetle control? Because I know, Will, down in the Dorset and some areas of the country, it's been a really big problem, hasn't it? So how has that 8-point plan been honed, and what's in it that can help give farmers some confidence if they were going to grow the crop?
Yeah, so the 8-point plan has been refined over a number of years by Agrii to essentially, as I mentioned, growing a good crop of oilseed rape is about doing a lot of the small things right and stacking your 1% gains. So the 8 measures can be used together as a fully integrated approach, which, as I said, will help deliver the best chance of growing a successful crop. So they include things like rotation choices. Historically, having such short rotations in the UK allowed the pest to really build up, certainly towards the sort of mid to late 2000s. Historically, it did tend to be, wheat, then oilseed rape, and then over and over again. So we would suggest broadening your rotations to 1 year and 5 or more. As I mentioned, moisture, not calendar date for drilling. And one that I think has really been successful as well, just to give a couple of examples, is companion cropping. In most of the crops down here in the south now, the vast majority include a companion crop, which can include just buckwheat or various other things in there as well. So the buckwheat just essentially acts as a green cover, because we know that the pest is attracted to brown and to exposed soil. So that helps just to cover the rape up and give it a chance to get away.
Thanks, Will. And earlier on in the podcast, you did mention that this was a technical crop to grow. And Ian, does that mean that planning is key?
I think planning is absolutely key to success. It's the first route to success in my mind. And then, the weather also needs to play ball, but also planning around the weather helps. If we're heading towards an early harvest and barleys or early wheats are off, and that stubble is available, appropriate planning on cultivations, potentially slightly higher stubble height before we cut the barley, can help mitigate some of the risk, and choose the right window to go in and establish that oilseed rape where we have moisture in the soil already, but also perhaps the forecast looks like there's some more coming.
What would be your top tips that you would like to share with those who are listening today to help growers get the most from this crop and all that it could bring for the farm business? Will?
So for me, the growers who I've worked with that consistently succeed with OSR tend to think slightly differently. So they won't ask things like, how do I make OSR work everywhere? They tend to ask things like, where will OSR work best for me? And that subtle shift changes everything, which will lead to better field selection, more consistent results. And I think the most important thing is less emotional decision making if things go wrong. But yeah, I'd say if you're taking one thing away from all of this, it's that OSR risk isn't something you can remove. It's something that you manage layer by layer and sort of decision by decision. But the good news is that we're in a better place now than we were a number of years ago in terms of better genetics, certainly better agronomy, better understanding of the crop, and therefore better decision making. So OSR will never be an easy crop to grow, but I think it's becoming a more predictable one.
Yeah. So that decision making alongside your agronomist around the kitchen table, so to speak, is a really important time invested, isn't it?
What we've touched on there is conversations around the kitchen table, and also over the next month, 6 weeks, there will be lots of industry open days, including our own. I would come and talk to some of the experts, seek advice. I think variety selection is always important. What is working well on your farm is important, but it's also good to try new things as well, in terms of looking at some new varieties and some of the more growy types, varieties perhaps that have some risk share associated with them. But don't throw baby out with the bathwater. If you're using companion cropping and getting successful crops yielding 3 to 3.5 ton, that is good news.
Thank you, Ian and Will, for your advice looking at prospects for oilseed rape for this autumn. Do stay tuned here on Tramlines with recent episodes including investment in farm machinery to soft fruit. If you have any questions for our experts that you'd like answered, email them in to info@agrii.co.uk. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. See you next time.